Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today's event. We are looking at new data on Dynamics AX in the cloud today, and we have a really fun, interesting kind of format. We have a panel with us, so I'll be introducing in just a moment. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com. We are going to be looking at the views of AX users and partners with new data on cloud computing and what's working today, what some of the future plans are, and how cloud investments ought to be changing in the future. Also, views on what partners see in the technology moving forward. So just to give you a sense of how things are going to run today, we're going to just do some introductions for our panelists to start things off. Then we'll be spending the first half of the session looking at some of the survey results and really discussing those. I'm going to get the views from all of our panelists and look at various data points that we took from the recent survey we ran. And then we'll be listening to presentations from each of our panelists for just a few minutes. They'll each be speaking about their own company and their own offerings, so you get a better sense of what they bring to the table as well. And we will try to save some time for questions as well. If you do have questions, you can enter those into the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the main presentation window. We will look for some opportunities to take those questions as we go today. Okay, so at this point, I would like to just introduce our panelists and let each of them just give a quick introduction of a minute or two, introduce themselves and their companies. So first, we have Tony De Silva. He's Director of Sales at SaaS Plaza. Tony, welcome to the event today.
Good morning. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, my pleasure. And why don't I just briefly introduce each of the other panelists, and then we can let each of you just say a couple words. So we also have Tyler Dorner on the phone. He's Vice President of Sales at WattServe. Tyler, welcome. Thanks for joining. And we also have Scott Morley on the line, Principal Application Architect at OneNeck IT Solutions. Scott, thanks to you too. Great to have you with us. Tony, would you like to just do a brief introduction to the audience? Just take a couple minutes here.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Jason. My name is Tony. I'm the Director of Sales here at SaaS Plaza for the Americas. I've been with the company about 4 years now. I've also got my colleague Jonathan with us today. Looking forward to hearing the findings of your survey, Jason, and hopefully sharing some good ideas around cloud and deploying AX in the cloud later on.
Great. Well, welcome. Next, Tyler Dorner. Tyler, welcome. And let me just take your microphone turned on here.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, happy to be on board here for our first one of these webinars that you guys are hosting. Eager to kind of hear the different perspectives on AX in the cloud, having kind of take a look at the results from your survey thus far, and kind of add the WattServe perspective here on what AX in the cloud means in the past, and I guess going forward here with the new AX.
Great. Well, thanks for joining. And finally, Scott Morley, welcome to the event today.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here. My name is Scott Morley. I'm an application architect with OneNeck, so I'm focused more on the technical side, and I've been working with AX and Azure and cloud for a number of years now, so it's exciting to be a part of this.
All right, great. Well, welcome to all three of you. And yeah, let's step into the first part of the session here. We want to look at some of the survey findings. Let me tell you a little bit about what we were doing. So we ran a survey in March of 2016 across all the Dynamics ERP products. It was run by and created by us at MS Dynamics World. We ended up with about 284 ERP users and professionals responding. There were additional responses that we sort of called out of the results for today's purposes from ISVs and people who said they had other roles in the space. So this is users, VARs, and other sort of ERP consultants whose feedback we used in the findings that we're going to be sharing today. And let me just give you a sense of some of the basic demographics, I guess, that you would maybe look at. So, yeah, there was a range of participants from across AX, GP, and NAV, as well as CRM, and obviously there's going to be some overlap there. The AX plus CRM is obviously fairly common on either the user or the partner side. And the overall participant types was split almost 50-50 between the VARs and consultants and the Dynamics customers total. For AX, it actually ended up being a little bit different. We had a lot more professionals and fewer customers, and that actually varied. With GP, it was a much different ratio, and same with NAV. But that gives you a sense of sort of who participated in the event this week. It's interesting that Microsoft Cloud technology and private cloud technology are also a big question we wanted to ask about. That is really where I wanted to start things. So, you can see here AX customer, and this is where we'll start to get into the AX specific data from the survey. So that was just a general overview of sort of who took the survey, who participated. But from here on out, we're going to focus primarily on the AX responses to our survey. So AX customers are using the cloud for a range of business needs today. But AX itself, and we'll see this on the next slide, but AX itself is only being used in a cloud scenario for a fairly small percentage of users. A lot of them, as we'll see, are using cloud. They're investing in Microsoft Cloud. They're investing a lot heavily in private cloud, as you can see here. But oftentimes, right now anyway, it's for a lot of the other business needs that they have, or a lot of other kinds of systems. I think it's good to have that sort of perspective as we get into this, because what we'll see is, really want to get into some of those choices and paying attention to some of those considerations for customers who are already doing things in the cloud, but maybe looking at AX as a future consideration. So here you can see some more of that perspective, I guess you'd say. And this is really where I want to start, maybe opening this up to our panelists, because with so much cloud adoption sort of already gathering momentum in areas that you might expect, so email and calendar, payroll, even CRM, and right on down the line there with HR, time and expense, you see ERP much farther down. But really what I first thought of when I saw this was perhaps this is typical, or how does this sort of match with what the folks on our panel would see when they're engaging with the AX community and talking to companies that are considering a cloud investment. Is it common to see that sort of profile where they've already made steps to invest in other areas first, in the cloud or in hosted scenarios? So I wanted to open that question up to our panelists. And for this first, I'm going to try to sort of rotate between our panelists here. But Tony, why don't I open this one up to you first, if you don't mind? Is that a common scenario, investing in other areas before moving to ERP?
It's interesting. I mean, I've been in the ERP business for, gosh, I hate to say it almost, but over 20 years. I think even today there's maybe a little bit of a misperception of what ERP is really comprised of. In my opinion, ERP could very well include a lot of the other services that are listed there. You can have HR and HCAM be part of ERP, time and expense management, certainly reporting, accounting, payroll, and even, like you mentioned, AX, NAB, they have CRM components in them. So it may simply mean that I'm not sure if the respondents to this particular question were addressing this in a and thinking about this in a standalone fashion. But I would venture that most organizations today, they look for an integrated product. And that product, although they may not perceive it as being necessarily ERP, nevertheless, that is what they're using. It's just that, you know, they're designating it a little bit differently. And so as far as we're concerned, you know, if somebody comes to us and they're deploying Dynamics in the cloud, it could very well be that all they're doing is deploying, just a portion of that, of the ERP application in the cloud, right? They're only implementing accounting, for instance. But nevertheless, it's only a small piece of the overall solution footprint.
Okay, so sort of a step-by-step sort of functional move is something that you see often, and where that fits in the ERP maybe is a matter of interpretation. Tyler, I'd like your perspective on this too. Is it really is it something that you see as a stepwise kind of approach, or do you see people sort of testing the waters first?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we see more and more often in that, you know, with what Microsoft's doing, obviously this being a Dynamics-focused conversation, with Office 365 and CRM Online and OneDrive and SharePoint, it tends to be a very easy jumping off point for companies who are looking to get up into the cloud. You know, the last component that we're seeing being cloud-based is what we would deem the mission-critical application, so the ERP. But let's be honest, if a salesperson can't update their sales forecast for 15, 20 minutes if something's not accessible, that's not the end of the world for most companies, where if they can't ship product or take orders for 15, 20 minutes, it's the end of the world. That's their business. So what I would deem the non-mission critical applications were kind of and still are kind of the first ones to be migrated up to the cloud that companies are a little more willing to kind of let go of or lose control of, for lack of a better term. But ERP still tends to be that one that they really have to make sure is available all of the time because it is running their business. And so this slide doesn't surprise me that kind of some of those, like I said, non-mission critical applications be the first ones to head up to the cloud.
All right, great. And Scott, I'd like to put this one to you too. You know, I think there's an aspect here of considering how these systems are going to work together when someone's got some cloud services already deployed. Is that part of that conversation as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look down this list, you know, you kind of go from the commodity software down to as Tyler said, the mission critical stuff. You know, so email and calendar is really non-value add, right? But when you get down to an ERP or even your telephony and that kind of thing, those are the things that are going to run your business. And so I think it's the things, you know, email standalone, what does it integrate with? Not a whole bunch unless you've got CRM, but then you've got CRM Online as well. And so you take those things that, you know, you can move up and see how it works, and then you move something else up and you connect it to that and see how it works, and eventually you get to that comfort zone where you say, okay, I know exactly what this is going to look like. Now I'm going to start moving my things that I know I can't do without.
Right, makes sense. Okay, great. I want to next move on to a question we asked about sort of future plans from users. So we asked them how they expect their cloud investments, and this is generally their cloud investments, to change in the next year. And this was, you know, fairly comparable to what users of other Dynamics ERP products were saying. About 52% in this case, a little bit higher than some of the other products. Planning to increase cloud investment overall, which is fine, and I didn't really have a real question on that. But I think you know, not too many folks looking at decreasing it, which is also probably to be expected in this at this point in sort of the maturity of cloud technology. But what I did want to move on to is just sort of that next question of, okay, well, where do you actually plan to invest further? And this is where customers were telling us they plan to invest next. ERP not at the top, but quite high up there. And so, you know, my question here, I think it is interesting that ERP is sort of moving up toward the top of that list. I think this would be an interesting one to be able to compare year after year to see maybe where ERP lined up 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But also the reporting. And so I guess I have a sort of a two-part question to put to our panelists. One is, what do you think of the reporting being right up there with the idea of ERP as a cloud service that customers are interested in? And I guess second, do you see well, I guess any other reaction to ERP being near the top of the list, whereas so few customers are already on it? Any other thoughts there? And Tyler, why don't I start with you there? So thoughts on either aspect of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the reporting side of things, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, for some of the enterprise level BI type solutions that are out there, or reporting tools, they normally come on as a phase 2 of an ERP deployment, and they're extremely expensive to get into. So it doesn't surprise me that companies who have just invested big dollar amounts in ERP would be looking for a more cost-effective way to do the BI components. And then, with the advent of Power BI and some of the other cloud-based reporting tools, it doesn't surprise me that that's where it's going to go. And going back to my comments earlier, reporting isn't mission critical. So, if a service is unavailable or it takes a little bit longer for something to run a BI report, it's not as big a deal as if ERP isn't there. So the results of this don't generally surprise me at all.
All right, great. Tony, I'm sorry, I'm actually going to go to Scott next. Scott, any other thoughts from you looking at this in terms of either this chart or sort of the level of companies that you think that are saying they plan to increase cloud spending in the next year? Does any of that does that mesh up with what you've seen?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of customers that are starting to look for that access anywhere capability. Right? So they want it on their mobile phone, or when they're not in the office or in their home office, they want to be able to get to it anywhere. And the cloud or the hosted environment really opens that up and makes that available, because now you got somebody else that's managing that availability. And there's a security aspect to that as well. If I have to manage that internally, then it's a lot more resources I need. Whereas if I've got a company that's doing it anyways, it just makes sense to kind of move it out there and make it so that somebody else is managing that for me, but still being able to reach that audience that I need to.
All right, great. And Tony, I want to sort of add one other aspect to this, and we can follow back up with the others. But one of the things that occurs to me, we saw, and I don't have a chart on this, but we saw that about 69% of AX customers who responded here took part in the survey. So they've had AX for 3 years or more, and I think about 45% have had it for 5 years or more. Are those is that timing something that would be in line with people looking to refresh not only their software but thinking about their hardware as well, if they've made past on-premise hardware investments?
Yeah, I think that definitely fits the bill. I would say, especially the significant investment that an ERP implementation represents, you're probably looking at 5 years. I would even say sometimes more, 8 years traditionally, in terms of a refresh timeline. And now, of course, with the significant advances that we've seen in cloud technologies, and it's certainly getting a lot of airtime these days. So it behooves any CIO or IT professional to look at the cloud as a viable deployment option. With regards to the graph, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. We live in a big data world, right? We are in the era of big data, so reporting is becoming hugely important, and some of the tools that are being developed for manipulating and handling and getting context out of that data are ever improving. With regards to ERP, moving closer or inching closer to the top of the list, not surprising at all. I mean, just like what I just finished saying, but if we consider that ERP is probably, one of the most comprehensive, complicated pieces of software potentially that any organization is going to implement, I think in the past they've been somewhat reluctant to deploy in the cloud, but today, especially with Microsoft, I can speak to Microsoft, they're making huge efforts in simplifying the way their ERP and their dynamic solutions get deployed in the cloud. And so I think that that probably is a huge driver for why ERP is inching closer to the top.
All right, great. Yeah, any other thoughts on that sort of either that hardware aspect or any other aspect? Otherwise, we can move on to some other findings here. So yeah, I wanted to. We'd asked AX professionals who participated in the survey about hybrid infrastructure. So people who customers of theirs who have some services running off-site, not on-premise, in either hosted or a public cloud environment, and some still on premise, and we wanted to know how frequently that's being used. And not. I guess the bottom line here is not too many said it's being used frequently. It seems to be sort of something that we see occasionally, and I guess the question to the panel here for an AX customer who is investing in hybrid infrastructure, do you have any best practices? Should customers be sort of leaning on either their Microsoft partner or a hosting provider who is helping them with a hybrid architecture? And where are those responsibilities? Where do you recommend that those responsibilities sort of divide up, if that makes sense, in order to make sort of hybrid, hybrid a successful model? And Scott, I'd like to start with you on this one.
Sure. So in looking at the responsibilities of it, your hosting provider, the company that's helping you integrate into the cloud, is really going to take the lead on that, because a lot of the reasons why we don't see integration is because people are afraid, I guess, of what's going to happen if they lose that connectivity. So if they've got on-premise stuff that needs to talk to the cloud and something happens to their internet connection, what does that leave them with? And so there's that hesitation to put all their eggs in that one basket. So understanding what the connectivity options are, because most hosting providers are going to have more than one. Even Azure's got more than one with the express route in that, so you don't have to rely expressly on the internet. So having them start that conversation so that companies understand what the integration can actually look like will make that a lot easier, because the software, that the integration is there already. You've either got third party or it can be developed, but having that reliable connection, I think, is what we've seen anyways, that people are hesitant about moving forward with.
Okay. And yeah, Tony, let me put that one to you too, and maybe adds a bit of a sort of psychological or sort of theoretical element to that. When customers are, what does it really take to make sure a company feels comfortable with connecting, hybrid infrastructure or hybrid architecture? Is it really purely on the technical side, or do they have to? Is there sort of a level of comfort as well they have to believe in the approach?
I think it's a little bit of both. We still run into people that are very, shall we say, cautious about, putting their data. Certainly, they're very, hard-fought and they're very protective of their data, and putting it in the cloud seems almost somewhat, ethereal for them. From that aspect, there's certainly that level of comfort that comes into play. Nevertheless, we're not in the days of dial-up anymore. I think, Scott mentioned ExpressRoute. If we're dealing with Azure, we have VPN tunnels that we can also work with, to provide direct connection into corporate networks. There are a number of different things that can be done, and certainly so from a technical perspective, it's a lot better. I'm going to say it's a slightly easier, discussion to have. There's nevertheless that psychological, sometimes barrier that is a little bit more difficult to overcome, and that's where we as cloud providers really, have to, ensure, and that's why we come up with guarantees and all kinds of assurances around, putting their, they're very important, mission critical information in the cloud and being able to access it. That's where we come in.
All right, great. And Tyler, as a follow-up, anything to add to that? And also, can you speak at all to sort of where you see your role and responsibilities as a cloud services provider, as opposed to, say, maybe a traditional partner that a company might be working with in tandem when they're considering this kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, we like to, well, we kind of say at the beginning of any project that the project and the engagement works better when it's a three-legged stool. So there are three key stakeholders in implementing an AX project in the cloud, and that's the Dynamics VAR, the customer, and us. And so we spend a ton of time at the kickoff of any project making sure we have a very clear rules of engagement, who does what, who's responsible for what, what the change management process is like, what the engineering specifications for the infrastructure is like in the background, because it's a lot easier to have that dialogue and level setting expectation up front than it is to kind of have it after expectations have been missed. So while a portion of the dialogue is technical when you talk about connectivity or private connectivity and express route, the harder thing than that to manage is the people from the three key stakeholders, from the Dynamics VAR, from the customer, and then from a Watser perspective.
Okay, great. And we have a question here that's related, so I think I'll bring that up. And I'll throw this open to really any of you that want to answer it. When is hybrid the most efficient model for ERP? So Scott, do you maybe want to take a stab at this first?
Yeah, I think hybrid really comes into play as far as being efficient when you've got a distribution of workload. You've got like shop floor control that's using handheld scanners and those kind of things that really need that real-time connectivity. But you want your ERP system to be in the cloud for that availability, the uptime guarantees, all those kind of things. So hybrid really plays an important role in that, because now you've got workloads in two different places, and they really need to be in those two different places because of the response times. And so hybrid works best in that kind of environment. Trying to move everything up to the cloud in that case, you're not going to be very happy with the results that you get with the scanners and that. So I think hybrid, you can leverage that to make it so that it works the way you want it to.
Okay, interesting. Tony, anything to add? Well, I'm sure glad we've got an architect on the panel. I would certainly go with everything that Scott just said. Distribution of workloads. I would maybe bring in. I've seen situations where reporting is done. And I'm talking about very large reporting tools, things like BI 360, Jet Enterprise, that tend to work best at a local level. The amount of resources that they utilize is huge, and so yeah, similar tools, but certainly handhelds. There are others, and also it'll also, I mean, for us, it'll also depend on the type of add-on or ISV solutions that are being integrated with their ERP. Even still today, there are those applications that are not, I'm doing air quotes, cloud ready. And so because we work on the premise of guaranteeing performance and availability, certainly when we do that evaluation, that assessment prior to the initial implementation of the environment, we have to determine whether it makes sense to put a particular application in the cloud or not. And so in those instances, certainly hybrid is the best way to go.
All right, excellent. Tyler, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, my only comment would be kind of as, cloud solutions kind of become, more prevalent, especially from, you look at Office 365, what they're doing with Exchange and SharePoint, and, Power BI. There's no such thing in my mind as a non-hybrid infrastructure anymore. I think everybody is doing it. To what degree that the companies are doing it does vary, but I would say almost every company out there is doing a hybrid of some sort, whether they want to call it that or not. I think that's the reality.
All right, cool. Well, we could keep going here. I do want to leave time for the presentations we're going to have from our panelists now, so we're going to move into that, and if we have time at the end, maybe we can explore a couple more data points. We'd also encourage all of you to send in any other questions. We'll take time for those at the end as well. But yeah, so let's move on to panelist presentations. We have an order already pre-selected. We're going to start with Tony here, and Tony, I'm going to give you control and let you just take a few more minutes to present a little more about SaaS Plaza. So you will have 10 minutes, and let's get control changed over to you. Please begin.
Hey, thanks very much. So just a quick overview on SaaS Plaza. We started out actually way back in the mid-90s, before the cloud was called the cloud. Back then, it was everything was known as application service provider. And we were already hosting many different enterprise applications at the time. And what we found, into the 2000s was we were getting more and more customers in the Dynamics community as Microsoft jumped into the ERP business with Great Plains and Exapta and so on, Navision. And so eventually by the early 2000s, we decided to focus exclusively on Microsoft Dynamics solutions. And today, we are, one of the leading cloud providers for Dynamics solutions, over 300 customers, which translates into something like over 1,500 environments deployed globally, both in multi-instance and single-instance modes. We've got a significant number of customers. I mean, we work both with direct customers as well as partners, and certainly ERP, because we do all of the dynamic solutions, including a CRM, but ERP is certainly our focus today. I think there might be an issue, real quickly, Jason. Is this the latest presentation that we sent you? It looks a little bit different.
That's a good question. I mean, I have a different copy. I have a copy, but
you know what? I'm gonna stop sharing here real quick. I'm just gonna bring up a different presentation that we have. It's very similar, but I just noticed a couple of points that were a little bit different. So let me just bring it up here real quick.
Sure. Just restart your sharing when you have that.
You bet. All righty. Okay. And I've still got control, right?
Yes, you should be able to. Yep, I see your screen starting to come back up.
All righty. Let's go back here. Yeah, this one's more up to date. There we go. All right. So as we continue through, some of the things that are included as part of our offering, obviously, some of the best-in-class guarantees in terms of availability, performance, security, audit, and certifications. We'll go through some of those in a little bit more detail. We cater to, pretty much horizontal offerings. So, most industries, or I should even say, a lot, if not all of the industries. But there's definitely we see, a focus in manufacturing, specifically automotive, with, retail, supply chain logistics, consumer packaged goods being some of our, key industries where we have the bulk of our customers. As I mentioned earlier, we do work both with direct customers as well as through partners where we have a reseller model. So in that world, we maintain over 220 Microsoft Dynamics partners that are spread across the globe, from the largest to the smallest, very local type consulting outfits that help to implement, part of our SMB customer base. And today, we have a very tight relationship with Microsoft. We've been in a number of, TAP programs, we've the last 2 years in a row, we've actually made Inner Circle. So for those that are not familiar, Inner Circle is, the top 1% of partners worldwide, kind of a select group within Microsoft. So we're very proud to have made that group. Across the bottom, you'll see some of the certifications that we have from ITIL and SSAE and ISAE, and some other ones there with cloud platform hosting, et cetera. We can provide, a lot more detail with regards to some of those details around certifications. With operations, we were originally founded in Amsterdam. Our U.S. headquarters is in San Diego, and we have offices pretty much around the world. We do maintain our own data centers. We have 5 data centers currently that we manage. We don't own our data centers. But we do manage our own specific data centers where we have our own private cloud, all built on 100% Microsoft technology. So the whole stack is Microsoft, but we also work with a number of different Azure regional data centers across the globe. So that's that for that screen. So what's the solution that we provide to our customers? Well, we've been in this business for quite some time. I mean, you'll find folks that have significant ERP and technical expertise within the organization. Like I say, our focus is 100% Microsoft. We don't do any, Citrix. We don't do any VMware. We don't do any of those other solutions. There are reasons for that. We maintain, a premier services and support contract with Microsoft that, costs us a lot of money. And if we ever experience any kind of issue, especially on the private cloud platform, we're able to pick up the phone, speak to Microsoft. They'll help us troubleshoot any issue up and down the stack. We don't have to worry about situations where, VMware might be involved or whatever, and they can no longer help us. We have a one, go-to source as far as support is concerned. We've been involved with Azure from the very beginning. We had some of the very first, ERP deployments on Azure going back to 2012 with NAV. We were involved in some of the TAP programs. So, and we're very closely linked and constant communication with, the top brass within the Azure team. As a matter of fact, we have folks, up there, I think, at the end of this week and early into next week, discussing some of the latest stuff going on with Azure. So, we like to say, we're well staffed with resources, that know ERP, know the technology stack from an architecture perspective, and all the best practices that we put together, and have so everything has come together into something that we call now Cloud Care. And Cloud Care is really the components of our service that comprise our service offering. So it includes the tool set, so all of the tools that are important for managing the environments, including monitoring, taking proactive action, in advance of any potential failures that we might see because of the different triggers that we have set, and we've developed those in conjunction with not just our private cloud, but also to help us on the Azure platform as well. In terms of methodologies, we use ITIL-based processes, for everything. So while we comply with a lot of the services that are described in LCS, if you're familiar with that from an AX perspective, we augment that with our very own best practices, for any customer deployment that we take on. People, I mentioned, we've got folks that are experts, but we also maintain 3 operation centers, which allow us to provide 24/7 support, kind of follow the sun support as well. So on a 24/7, 365 basis, there are eyes on our customers' environments. There's never a moment during the day where somebody is not actually, keeping track of the health and performance of our customers' environments. And last but not least is compliancy. So, we are at ISAE, which is the international standard, and SSAE compliant. We are audited at least once a year by PwC, independent audits. And by the way, we as a company are audited. We do not rely on our data centers, audits or certifications and pass those off as our own. I know that, the cloud certainly is getting a lot of traction, in the marketplace, and I've heard of folks, that are up and coming and trying to pass off other folks' certifications as their own. Don't be deterred by that. We as a company,
and we are at time, Tony.
Okay, and just finishing up, so we've got a service level also, which is part of our offering, and again, one of the best in class, guarantees 99.9 at the application level, not just at on the technology or the server, but at the application. So anyways, here's our contact information. If you need to, please get in touch with us. We'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. And we will now hear from Scott Morley of OneNeck. Scott, I'm going to give you control.
Okay.
And you are free to bring up your screen. All right. Yep, and we see that.
Okay. So again, my name's Scott Morley. I'm from OneNeck IT Solutions. We've been around for quite a while, more than a decade. This is just a brief overview of what we do. We have 9 data centers that we operate out of in the U.S. We have relationships with data centers internationally, but the 9 data centers in the U.S. we own. We've formed through the acquisition of a number of other companies, and so when you look at OneNeck, it's been around for quite a while, but the experience that we have and the relationships that we've built are kind of a culmination of everything that's come together. And we have presence in 15 states. From what we actually do, we do co-location, we do private cloud, and we also do application management. And so that application management is not specific to our data centers. We'll actually work on-premise in our data centers, and now in Azure. We've recently become a CSP partner with Microsoft so that we have access into that underlying Azure infrastructure so we can do monitoring and reporting. And so we do that all across the hybrid cloud. We've been working in ERP the entire time that we've been in business, not specifically AX. We've been in business longer than AX, but we do AX now as well as one of our primary ERP focuses. So we look at things like monitoring the system, we do patching, code promotions, all of the life cycle that you would see in a typical ERP system. What we don't do is an implementation. We don't do custom development. So we really have a strong relationship with AX integrators, with the partners that are going to come in and help with the AX system. But from an infrastructure point of view, that's where our strong point is, and so that's where we focus. Just a quick glance at some of the software that we've worked with. Not all of this is specific to AX, but these are all of the areas of expertise that we have people on staff that we can work with and manage. So we're very comfortable working with third-party integrations and getting things to work across different environments. So when I talk about our private cloud and the offering that we have, we call it Relia Cloud. It's been around for quite a while. It's in all of our different data centers and connected between our data centers. Similar to ExpressRoute in Azure, we have a way that customers can get in directly to us, not dependent on the internet, and we manage basically everything that they would want in a private cloud. And we also have connectivity directly into Azure so that as we talk about where workloads need to be and that hybrid cloud and whether it should be on-premise or private cloud, public cloud, we have that complete connectivity between those so that the integration points that you have are seamless. So just taking a look at what we actually do in Rely Cloud. So we talk about your enterprise applications. We've got high availability. Everybody has, we call them pods, where we spin up things and we can do disaster recovery between our environments or between on-premise and our environments, and also now within Azure. We take a look at optimizing the cost. So we actually will come in and do an evaluation and help you understand the workloads that you have and where they're best suited from a cost perspective and from an availability perspective. So we help help you understand all of those different connectivity points. We're compliant as well. We have a number of certifications, HIPAA, all of those, standard certifications that you would expect a company to have when you're talking about protecting somebody else's data. And we really have put a lot of investment into the backup and DR capabilities, making it so that, if there is ever an issue, the downtime is really limited and customers can get back up and running very quickly. So we also take a look at what we do on Azure now. As I said, we're a CSP partner, and so what we're looking at doing is extending our monitoring and the management that we had, similar to doing it on-premise or in our private cloud. We're now doing it in Azure. So that complete visibility and responsibility, we can handle it no matter where it is. We provide integrated access. So as I said, we have, we can connect Rely Cloud to Azure or down to on-prem, so that it doesn't really matter where that workload is, we can manage it. And as I mentioned, we'll do Azure as a backup solution, either from on-prem or from Rely Cloud, or to on-prem or to Rely Cloud. So wherever your workload is, we can make sure that there's that redundancy so that you don't have any single point of failure. So you take a look at our AX practice. We've been hosting AX since 2004. We're one of the first hosting companies to offer it. We currently manage more than 10,000 AX end users, and that's across, obviously, all of our environments and a number of customers. We manage the AX application. So again, if there is custom development and there's issues, we can look at it, but we don't offer that development service, but we do manage it completely. So we'll do data analysis, we do user additions, security, all of that kind of stuff we'll do. We have a dedicated in-house AX support team, so it's not a generic support team that also does AX. They're dedicated to AX. That's all they do. And so we've got that depth of knowledge and experience with some of the people that we've had have worked on quite a number of integration points with third parties and additional solutions that we've worked on. So here we just have a sample of the customers that we've been supporting. ADEC actually started with us in a different ERP system, and we just went through a migration with them to get them onto AX in Rely Cloud. So we moved them from their old ERP system in Rely Cloud to their new ERP system in Rely Cloud. We also offer health checks, and so one of the important things with AX is making sure that the environment runs consistently, that your data is consistent, that's healthy, the environment's healthy, we're not seeing bottlenecks. And as things change over time, we need to make sure that we keep an eye on that. So it's not just a simple monitoring, oh, you've got some CPU spikes or those kind of things, your data is growing beyond what your SQL Server can support. We really get in and look at the performance of it. Do you have queries now that are suddenly taking a long time, and help you understand why and work through those. So as a service that we offer, we'll look through that entire environment and give you a report as to what's going on with it. So the way that we look at the customer management, it's really a relationship, and it's not just with the customer, it's with everybody that's involved. As it was said earlier, you really have to have that everybody involved, and everybody has a stake in the game. And so that's the way that we look at things. It may not always be our fault or our primary concern, but it's always our responsibility. So if there's 5 people in the room, we really have to make sure that all 5 people are being involved, and if we need to take that leadership role, we will. And so to that end, we always have a customer team. There's always somebody that's assigned to a customer as the single point of contact to make sure that they understand what's going on with the customer needs, and they can engage anybody on our side that's needed so that we have that full support that's required to help in whatever the situation is. We obviously are using ITIL, so everything that we do follows the standard pattern. We've got all of our policies in place, and we're really concerned about making sure the customer is satisfied. There's no point in selling you something if we can't support it, because then you're just going to go somewhere else. So we really want to make sure that everything that we offer, we're experts at, which is why we limit some of the stuff that we do, which is why we don't go do implementations, because we don't have that depth right now. And so we focus on the things that we know that we can do well. So just some of the people that are involved in working with customers on a regular basis.
Tony, about a 30-second warning here.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
so
Scott.
That's okay. So I've already gone through the information that's in this slide and the rest of my speech, so I can skip it. And I just wanted to give you guys a view as to the customers that we've had over the years. Again, not all of these are AX customers, but it speaks to the longevity of the customers that we've had. And you can see Sunny Delight on there for 12 years and ADEC for 16 years that we just migrated. So very strong customer satisfaction story.
Thank you very much, Scott. And
Thank you.
we will now hear from Tyler Dorner. Tyler, I'm going to give you control now. Please do share your screen.
Everybody see my screen here?
We do see it, yep.
Perfect. So I will try to end in the 7 minutes according to my clock that ends here. So there are a lot of similarities between SaaS Plaza and us and OneNeck. We've kind of, I'll just summarize a bit here. So, we do have the same focus on dynamics. It's all we do. It's our only business. What we spend a ton of time doing is working with customers and working with partners on custom engineered, custom configured, custom requirement dynamic AX solutions. So if I look at our customer base from the ones that are 20, 30 AX users to the ones that are thousands of users at a time, no two are the same. Some from warehouse management solutions to point of sale, e-commerce, credit card, SharePoint integration, CRM, Power BI, Zap BI, no two are the same, and kind of understanding how all of those different moving parts come together to make up the solution for the end customer. So we do have a global reach. We got customers connecting from almost 70 countries around the world back to our North American-based data centers today. We're on the Microsoft TAP program as it comes to Azure as well. So types of deployments we can help with. We do offer the Dynamics AX guaranteed uptime, custom infrastructure, no single points of failure anywhere in our infrastructure. We do provide the 24/7, 365 support. The one point that I'll call out is a bit different. We don't charge more for after-hours support. We don't put a limit on the number of support requests that our customers or our partners can submit. When we say 24/7 by 365, we really mean it. We don't believe in nickel and diming customers or partners. It's an all-up solution, but the only variable you have in cost when hosted with WattServe is data storage, period. So there's no extras for bandwidth or any of that kind of stuff. So, we're doing Azure Public Cloud today. We're doing rapid deployments using an automated portal on NAV and soon to come GP coming up here. But we're also working with Microsoft on how to provide the managed services layer for AX7 or the new AX, whatever you want to call it, and what that's going to look like. Because there is still a need for a managed service for AX, even though Microsoft is providing a bit more that we would typically do today directly. They're still putting it on Dynamics partners to provide a managed services layer, and most Dynamics partners don't know how to do that. So we find it works best when the end customer has direct access to the WattServe team. So, and a scenario would be if you have a urgent support request or a system unavailable at 2 o'clock in the morning, most of ours aren't staffed at 2 a.m. to field a support call. We are. So we can provide responses within guaranteed 15 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Coming up here next in the future, when Microsoft releases Azure Stack, we've already made the commitments to them that we will leverage Azure Stack for hosting the new AX in a private cloud scenario in the WattServe data centers, leveraging some of the new Microsoft technology. What we like to say is, if you look at our proposed monthly fees, 60% of what we charge on a monthly basis is stuff that a customer would have to go do anyway. That's the software, that's the hardware, that's data center space. So the value add that we bring to the table is the other 40%, and that other 40% is people. That 40% is expertise in AX. You know, our team is very experienced in the channel. You know, we're hosting AX deployments all the way back to AX version 3. So that 40% is the WattServe difference. So if we talk about the new AX specifically a little bit, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, you know, it is the next major release. Microsoft has asked us to stop calling it AX7, just start calling it AX. And it is exclusively on the Azure public cloud, but as I said, there is still a huge gap between what Microsoft's service offering is and what customers are looking for, and that's the gap that we can fill. So what I'd say, I mean, if I look at kind of the commentary from today, you know, not one of us is better than the other. We're all different, and it's up to the customers and the partners to choose the right provider. Talk to other AX users, talk to other AX partners, understand how the environment is priced. Is it by environment or is it a subscription type model?
Tyler, are you still there?
Yes?
I'm sorry, we lost about 15 seconds of your audio there.
Oh, okay, sorry. Understanding how your environment is priced. Is it by environment? Is it a subscription model? We still see probably 90% of our customers are buying the AX licenses from a partner in the traditional way and then providing it to us to host. We have some AX customers who are buying their RDS and SQL licenses off of an enterprise agreement and providing them to us to host. So we're totally flexible with how that works. And again, is there direct end user support? So having that guaranteed response time directly from the people who know AX, who know how to support the application, make sure the application is available and performing, that's ultimately what customers are looking for. You know, they don't want to be kind of put through a ringer in support and what's going where. So I think I covered off everything I wanted to extremely quickly, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, thanks, Tyler, and well done on the velocity there. I would welcome any other questions that anyone has from the audience. Please enter them into the Q&A if you have them. If you'd like to hear any other responses from our panel, or any other details, or any other elements of the survey.
I just want to hop back in. I just missed one of my notes here that I wanted to mention on this choosing the right provider. Compare track record. You know, we have never lost a customer due to our products and services. We've had companies go bankrupt or get acquired. We have never had somebody migrate away from WattServe due to the products and services that we sell.
All right. Great. Thanks, Tyler. And if you have another minute, are panelists able to stay on? I have at least one other question here that might be interesting to go through. From one of our guests here, says, having worked for an ERP company in the 80s and lived through the service bureau issues, what would you say are major differences in cloud implementation as it is considered today? Is it in terms of what it means today compared to what it meant in past decades? And Tyler, I don't know, do you want to take that one first?
I can try. I think cloud has been around for ages, to be honest. I mean, if you look at old Unix-based systems at banks, green screen, where everything was housed centrally and accessed remotely, that was probably the oldest version of a cloud, although nobody was calling it a cloud. I think the biggest difference is that it is now not something just for big corporations, but for end users, right? I mean, I can store my kids' birthday photos in the cloud. It has just become so much more affordable, so much more accessible that it has become mainstream.
All right, great. Tony, anything to add on that one?
So, so I missed the first part of the question, Jason. Would you mind repeating that real quick?
It was just it was asking sort of past, cloud-like offerings from like a service bureau
Yep.
compared to cloud implementation today. Would you highlight any particular differences?
To emulate something Tyler just said, I worked for a bank way back when, back then everything was mainframe based with TSO, and everything had a green screen or amber screen. I mean, the biggest difference is, I think today, whereas before it seemed like it was more of a trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. Today, applications are architected from the ground up for the cloud. They're architected to be ubiquitous across all different platforms, including mobile. So I think, if anything, that would be the biggest change today. I remember back in the day when applications were being developed and we were calling them web native. Well, that has gone well beyond the web native denomination today. Everything is architected already to take advantage of the technologies available in the cloud, and I think that just bodes well for everybody. Certainly from an access perspective.
All right, great. And Scott, anything to add there? I can also put another question to you.
Yeah, well, I can do this one and the other question as well, but I think similar to what Tony was saying, I think that it's the pervasiveness is really the difference. Back in the 80s, it was very specialized. So the people that were supporting it were really specialists. Now it's the same thing that everybody else has supported. It's just in a different location. So I think the knowledge availability is much greater, and so the service and support that you get is going to be a lot better.
All right. Sort of an interesting question here, asking how would you compare Microsoft providing managed services through their support offering versus what you're able to provide? I think it's really open to all three of you. And let's see, we start with Tyler last time. So Tony, why don't we start with you on this one? How do you see that? Do you see it as competition? How do you differentiate?
That's an interesting question. I mean, we've been kind of asking ourselves the same thing. It's such a new offering from Microsoft, to be honest, that we're still waiting to see how that really pans out. If they are a true managed services provider, certainly it'll cut into our business, our collective business. Traditionally, we don't think that Microsoft is necessarily interested in being the full managed service provider for customers. Anybody that's, and again, not to knock Microsoft too much, but if anybody's ever tried to get a hold of Microsoft support, you probably know what I'm talking about. So you want a more reliable resource, when you're deploying a mission critical system like an ERP, like AX. So I think certainly for what they like us to call now AX, really AX7 being deployed in the cloud, it's almost a pure play SaaS type solution. They're locking everything down, so they're taking a little bit more control. We're taking more of a wait and see approach and really looking forward to the AX7 perpetual or on-prem version being available. And I think that's where we're going to differentiate ourselves.
Scott, anything to add on that one?
Well, I think it's going to really boil down to the comfort level that we've talked about all along with how customers feel with the relationship that they're going to be able to build. So, one of the things that you'll see in a service provider that's been doing this for a while, like any of us have, we all talk about relationship. We all talk about being there for the customer. and there's that continuity of service. And so where Microsoft is really going to need to focus in order to make this work for them is going to be that. It's going to be that, I know when I pick up the phone, I'm going to have somebody that I can rely on that's going to help me out.
Great. And Tyler, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, my sentiments would be roughly the same. I mean, when you pick up the phone and call our support desk or our sales line, I mean, the team reports to me on our support side. We keep our support engineers for the life of the account. So the person who is involved with your deployment, who is involved with your change orders, is the same person who's fielding your support requests. So we end up becoming an extension of our customers' IT departments. And that's the same that we can do, inserting ourselves in between the customer and the Microsoft AX7 direct relationship. So, we can still assist in code promotes. We can still assist in ticket resolution. We can still assist in performance troubleshooting. We won't have the same access to resolve issues because Microsoft has those environments locked down, but we can still add value from a professional services standpoint. When you look at lifecycle services, it's great that it gives you a portal to deploy servers. You still got to know which ones to pick and how many and in what configurations. And, there is still a human element that needs to be, and a human expertise that has to be involved, even when you're deploying for AX quote-unquote 7, using lifecycle services, you still got to know what you're doing. So there's absolutely a value add that we can insert ourselves in, and we've carved out kind of what that solution looks like.
All right, great. As you probably noticed, I put our panelists' contact information up. We are going to start wrapping up now. I want to remind folks there is a brief survey that will pop up after the event ends. We really appreciate any feedback you can offer there. It just takes a few seconds, and both our panelists and I also really appreciate that help. Well, let me just say thanks to all three of you, Tony, Tyler, and Scott, for taking the time today. This has been really interesting. Really appreciated hearing your views on all these different topics.
Not at all. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and thanks again to you. And thanks to everyone in the audience for the questions, for your attention. We are recording today's event. We'll be making that available soon. With that, we will conclude the presentation. Have a great day, everyone.